Hey everybody, it's Camille, Aiko. I hope that you are living the life that you love spiritually, mentally, physically, and financially. I'm on here a little late. Y'all, I've been knocked out. So, I'm up and I've read and we're going to go over this and then I'm going back to sleep. So you all drop those ones. If you're catching this live, drop a 2. If you're watching this on replay, and make sure you share this so it can help your friends, your family out. And then in the process of doing that, you'll also be entered into our weekly drawing to win cash and gift cards and free products. Hey, Jessica, what's going on? Hey, what's going on, Wilbert? Hello, 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 everybody. Girl, I am tired. I am very, very tired. So after we get done with this, I'm going back to sleep. So, that's what I was just saying. I woke up not too long ago. I guess, I don't know when I woke up, but I've been laying down. All right, what's going on, Devin? Hey, Ryan. Hello, hello, everybody. So we are discussing the book, The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. All right, I know it's backwards, but it's The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. We are on chapter 7. I'm good, long day at church. Hopefully it was a good long day at church. So this chapter here tonight is talking about 4 degrees of action. Good evening, everybody. Make sure you're dropping the 1s if you're going to stay on here and watch it live. Drop a 2 if you're catching this on replay, and be sure to share this so that you can help some other people out in applying the 10X rule to their lives and also be entered into our weekly drawing. So the 10X rule, before we even talk about the 4 degrees of action, the 10X rule is applying 10 times more effort, 10 times more thought to your goals, whatever category your goals might be in, but just applying 10 times more effort, 10 times more thought so that you can get greater amounts of success. So Grant has applied this 10X rule to his life and has achieved success, and now he's teaching us how to do it. And as I like to remind us, the level of success, or definition, should I say, of success is all dependent on you and what phase of life you are in. So when I say success, it's almost a broad term because it's going to be dependent upon where you are specifically and what you are specifically trying to achieve. So that's why it's important for you to understand what your purpose is, what your personal goals are, and where you are trying to go. Because again, my success may not be your success. But as long as you are operating in your full capacity and you are doing everything that you know to do to be successful, that is what really counts. And good evening, everybody. So just one more time before we hop in. We're going over the book, The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone, and we are on chapter 7. All right. So the first thing when we're talking about the 4 degrees of action, 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 we know that faith without works is dead. So it doesn't matter. You can have all the faith in the world that you want, but if you're not putting any action to it, then nothing is going to happen. Hey, Bobby. All right. So he says the more action you take, the better your chances are of getting a break. See, because we know that success does not just happen to us. Success happens because of us and the actions that we take. Success happens because of us and the actions that we take. It doesn't just happen to us. So our actions have to be disciplined, consistent, and persistent. And it's that combination that is going to allow us to achieve success. All right. So he says, understand how to calculate and then take the right amount of action is more important than your concept, your idea, your invention, your business plan, that relationship. See, things, we can have the greatest of the great, but if people don't know about it, if you don't get it in front of people to know that it's there, that it's available, that if they don't know the benefits, they don't know what it's going to do for them, then it really doesn't matter. So you have to be able to introduce your idea, your service, your product, whatever it is that you're trying to go after, in the right way, with the right people, at the right time. So everything has got to be strategic. So this is talking about, that goes back to, should I say, the thinking, applying the 10X rule, right? Let's see. Hey, Ronald. Hey, what's going on, Dwight? Yes, success does not happen because we allow God to intervene in what we do. Yes. So, does happen. Not, I don't know if I read that correctly the first time. Okay, I had to go back and read your comment again, Jeffrey, make sure I was agreeing to the right thing. All right. So, but I think that point that I was just talking about is very key of understanding how to calculate, then take the right amount of action. You don't want to underdo it and you don't want to overdo it for that person. You have to know who you're dealing with. You have to know your audience. Hey, Jay, good evening. What's going on, Eric? So most people fail only because they are operating at the wrong degree of action. Okay, and so now the 4 degrees of action, let me tell you what those are. Number 1, do nothing. And I'll explain how that is an action later, because you might be saying, okay, well, do nothing. That's not an action, Camille. We're going to explain how do nothing is a degree of action. All right. Number 2, retreat. Number 3, take normal levels of action. Number 4, take massive action. So those are the 4 levels or 4 degrees of action. And all of us are operating in one of those in different areas and categories in our life. Okay. So 1 and 2, and really 1 through 3 of do nothing, retreat, take normal levels of action. These are the most popular degrees of action. And they're also the ones that get us the least results, unfortunately. But when we look at degree 1 and 2 of do nothing and retreat, those 2 typically end up in failure. And then take normal levels of action is going to get you a normal life. And then taking massive action is that degree of action that is going to get us to success. Just uploading wrestling pics. Truth. Okay. So before we go into describing everything, Grant says it's important to understand that everyone utilizes all 4 degrees of action at some point in their lives, and especially in response to different areas of their life. So for instance, you could be using massive action in your career, but completely retreat when it comes to your civic duties and responsibilities. Or another person might be doing nothing when it comes to learning about social media and even retreat from it, right? So there's these different areas in our life where we might be taking massive action, other areas where we're retreating, other areas where we're taking normal levels. And so this is where you really have to identify in your goals, like, am I doing what I need to be doing to accomplish what I want to accomplish? Okay, so going back to the point that I was making earlier is that most people spend their time in the 1st through 3rd degrees, doing nothing, retreating, and operating at normal levels of activity. And so we already talked about when you do 1 and 2, do nothing and retreat, failure. When you act normal, you're going to get normal. But when you take massive action, you're going to get success. So the 1st degree of action, do nothing. Okay, signs that you are doing nothing. Okay, you guys ready for these signs? I want y'all to listen. Sometimes I see some of my posts in my timeline, and I know that this applies to some of you also. Just say, ouch me, take it, and then do what you need to do so that you can get better, okay? And I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about some of my Facebook friends, all right? Now, signs that you are doing nothing include exhibiting boredom, lethargy, complacency, the lack of knowledge or lack of purpose. People in this group will find themselves spending time and energy justifying their situation, which requires as much work as other actions. So the do nothing, as I talked about, we said, well, how is do nothing one of the areas of action? Because you're doing nothing. Well, everything is constantly moving. And even in doing nothing, you're having to justify why doing nothing is okay. And that's even taking your energy of having to argue or discuss that viewpoint, right? So while you're doing that, you could actually be implementing something more productive to get better results versus just telling everybody why you're doing nothing, why it's okay to be bored and why it's okay to not have purpose, and just trying to explain yourself in that way. The person not taking action has to make excuses for his or her condition. And your condition is doing nothing. That is, you have a condition of doing nothing. Like, we weren't created to do nothing. We were created with a purpose. We were created to take action. So if you find yourself in a position where you are doing nothing, understand that this is a condition that you need to fix, okay? This requires tremendous creativity and effort. You making excuses for your condition of doing nothing. So this makes you have to think of, why is it okay that I haven't accomplished anything different in these past 6 months? Why am I still in the same place? Why haven't I been able to do anything different in the past 10 years? Why am I here? And now you have to come up, first convince yourself after you come up with these great things, and then you're convincing other people. There is a better way to approach life than this, everybody. So it's also interesting to note that those who do nothing in one area of their lives will find something they love to do and spend time doing those things, something for which they'll often take massive action. So let's just use, for example, there are some people who are not productive in their purpose and in their goals, but they spend a whole lot of time playing video games. And so then they have to justify why playing video. And this is just an example. Now, I'm not saying you can't play video games, but if you find yourself excessively playing it, like you go to work and then you come home and then you're just playing video games until the wee hours of the night, and then you go to work and then you come home and you do it again, this is an issue, especially if you are an adult. Even if you're a child, it's an issue, because as a child, you are learning how you should be acting. You're creating those habits, and we're creatures of habit. So if you are learning those habits as a child, when you become an adult, unless you have an awakening and something triggers in your mind, you're going to have those same type of habits, which are going to lead you to nothing. Okay, so whatever it may be. So I just use video games as an example, but Grant says, whatever it may be, I assure you that some area of life receives their full energy and attention. So it could be reading. It could be some type of hobby. Maybe it's sewing, but you only sew just to sew for yourself, and you're not really fulfilling your purpose. Okay? Those who do nothing will insist to their friends and family that they are happy and content and that all is all right with them, which only serves to confuse everyone, because it is evident that they are not living up to their full potential. So haven't you all been around someone and you know they're not really accomplishing anything much in life, and they're like, no, I'm okay. And we're looking like, what? Like, how are you possibly okay with the fact that you're not really okay? Like, we have done a really good job at convincing ourselves that we are good when we're not good. I'm a video game guy. I love video games, music, and graphics. And that's great, Eric. And as long as you are still working towards your goals and your purpose, that's fine. Or maybe you're going to make a career out of video gaming and the music and the graphics. But see, we all have a greater purpose. And so we need to be making sure that we are working towards that and not doing nothing yet pouring into something that is not going to help us to achieve greater. Because again, our goal is to be able to achieve success. Okay? So let's keep it moving. The second degree of action, okay, is retreat. Now, retreaters, let me give you all the description of what retreaters are. And so hopefully, you know, you guys are catching what I'm saying and that it's applying to you. You guys are kind of quiet tonight, so I don't know. Okay, professional video gaming is now a 6-digit profession. Yes. And so if we actually are going into it and we're in that industry, awesome, great. But just playing it all day, that's just a completely different story, right? So retreaters are those who take action in reverse, probably in order to avoid negative experience that they imagine will come as a result of taking action. The retreater personifies the fear of success phenomenon. He or she has experienced results that were not fruitful, or that he or she did not perceive as fruitful, and has therefore decided to avoid taking further actions that might prompt this to occur again, like the do-nothings. Retreaters justify their responses and believe it is their best interest to remain operating in their current level. Retreaters claim to be doing so in order to avoid more rejection or failures. It is almost never the actual rejection or failure that has impacted them. More often than not, it's their impression and evaluation of what failing and rejection mean that is causing them to retreat, right? So pretty much with retreaters, you get stuck on, I don't want to experience the feeling of being rejected or failure. So instead of going after it, you just don't do it. And so it might be, I tried to do this certain type of business at one point of time, and then people quit. So I quit, and it's not for me, and it's not going to work. So we're just not going to do it, right? All right. So that's a retreater. Or maybe, am I getting ahead of myself? I kind of am, so I'll wait. But he says, watch any healthy child, and you will see that it is not normal behavior to retreat, but rather advance and conquer, right? So even if you think about a healthy child, if that child is growing, or healthy, should I say, then they're growing, right? They're continuing to advance. If a child isn't growing, they're not gaining weight, then what's happening? The parents are taking the child to the doctor. They're figuring out how they can eat better food. Is it the milk? Do they need to start on some formula? Like, they're taking the proper measures to help the child grow. And again, when we think about our success is our child, this is one of the concepts that we talked about the other day, that success is our child, it's our baby. So we need to be nourishing it and making sure that it's growing. So in our degrees of action, we should be seeing growth. It shouldn't be stagnant. Because if it's stagnant, then it's not growing, and therefore we're not nourishing our baby of success the way that we need to. Okay? So regardless of the reasons why retreaters move themselves in the opposite direction of their goals, the outcome is usually the same. So he said, I would imagine that everyone reading this knows someone who retreats, and perhaps you can even see how you retreat in some areas of your life. Any realm in which you have assumed you can no longer advance and improve, and are now deciding that there's nothing that you can do about it. You guys ever felt like that before? Like you just came to a place where you had a goal and you're just like, never mind, there's just nothing I can do about it, so I'm just gonna quit. So he says, the stock market sucks, I'm never investing in it again. That's a retreater. That's a retreater mindset. Most marriages fail, I'm staying single. Retreat. So even someone who has not been married before, but they're looking at marriages and saying, okay, these marriages are failing, then you are still retreating. Because remember, a retreater doesn't always base their actions off of something that has actually happened to them. They're basing it off of the fact that they don't want it to happen to them. So it's almost like they're going into preservation mode so that they don't have to experience that thing. Another example, the acting business is too tough. I'll just be a waiter for the rest of my life. That's retreating. The job market is terrible. No one is hiring. I'm filing for unemployment. That's retreating, especially if you feel like you're just going to depend on unemployment. Retreat. I can't control the outcome of the election, so I'm not even going to bother to vote. That's retreating. When you feel like your action can't yield you the results, or you're afraid that it's not going to yield you the results, so you just opt not to do it, you are a retreater. So another thing I want you to think about is, what are some goals that you have set and then you don't complete them? Like maybe you're that type of person who starts things but don't finish. Then that means that you have a retreater personality. That is something that you need to work on. That you can't just start stuff and then stop it because you feel like it's not going the way that you want it to go, or you're not getting the results that you want. Maybe you just need to re-strategize. Maybe you need to add more action, add more thought, 10 times more, right? Because we're talking about the 10X rule. So let's see here. They all still require some kind of action to be taken, even if it's just making a decision. You have to make a decision. You have to put thought into whether or not you are or are not going to do something. And so you might as well, if you're going to put some thought into it, you're going to put some action into it, make it productive for you versus unproductive and deciding to stay in a place that dead things are. That place of ungrowth, right? Is ungrowth a word? If so, I just made it one. That used to be me, but not anymore. Awesome, Jessica. Active in business, can more money? Depends. Some actors do and some actors don't. But yeah, if you put 10 times more action and effort, you can definitely end up making more money as an actor. That is for sure, depending on what type of actor you want to be. So now those who retreat will spend a lot of time justifying why they are retreating. There is usually no arguing with these individuals as they have typically convinced themselves completely that they're merely doing what they need to do to survive. They will then spend as much energy justifying their decision to retreat as the most successful person will in creating success. So whereas the most successful person is taking the action, they're doing what they need to do, they're strategizing, they're making calls, they're connecting with people. The person who wants to retreat will do all of that as well, but it's in the opposite direction of their goals. So they will justify, hey, well, I'm not going to the business convention because, I just really don't feel like it. I'm really not going to get anything from it. I've heard it all before, or I'm not going, we come up with all types of excuses and things. And that's what we go out and we spend our time focusing on and sharing with other people. So, yep. Okay, Eric, I was talking to you when I said that. All right. So the third degree of action. So we've already talked about do nothing, which is number 1. Number 2, retreaters. And number 3, taking normal levels of action. And hello to everyone who's joining in. We are going over the 10X rule by Grant Cardone, and we are on chapter 7. Make sure you share this video so that you can be put into the weekly drawing for free cash, gift cards, and free health products. Okay. Now, let's get back to the third degree. People who take normal levels of action are probably the most prevalent in our society today. This level of action creates the middle class and is actually the most dangerous degree of action because it's considered acceptable. So isn't that an interesting point of view? And he goes on to make a really great point later on. So he says that when we are in this action of normalcy, right, where we're just doing regular action in our lives, he says people in this group spend their lives taking enough action to appear average and create normal lives, marriages, and careers. However, they never do quite enough to create real success. So these are the people who are just making it by. They're comfortable with where they are, but, they're really not able to do what it is that they truly want to do. All right. So as long as average works, they're fine with it. As long as my bills are paid, I'm okay. As long as I have these basic things, then I'm okay. And if that's where you want to be, that's fine. But if God gave you something bigger than that, then it's not fine, because we should be operating at our full capabilities. So this is not about going after money or being greedy or, just trying to achieve some material things. No, we're talking about achieving success so that you can fulfill your purpose and that you're not walking around with a whole bunch of untapped gifts and talents within you. You want to be at a place in your life where you're utilizing your gifts and your talents and giving it back to everybody else, right? God put you here for a purpose and for a reason. And so you need to be living that out. So when we're talking about achieving success, yes, it is personalized. And it's not just about trying to go and get money and trying to get things. No, it is about being able to fully live out the life that God has purposed for you. Okay. So he says, as long as average works, people are fine with it. They don't cause problems for others or themselves as long as conditions remain steady and predictable, right? A lot of people, they don't like ups and downs. They don't like the unpredictability. They have to know that their check is coming. It's going to be $500 every week. And I'm just using 500 as a number. right? And as long as that's what they get every week, they are fine. Don't disturb their money. But here is the problem. Here is the problem with average and average thinking and average way of attacking your goals. He says the moment the market conditions become negatively impacted and therefore less normal, these people will suddenly realize that they're at risk. So again, I'll use the example of the government shutdown. Right, there are people who work for the government, but once that government had the shutdown and they weren't getting paid for those days and some people lost their jobs, then it became an issue. Whereas they might have just been cruising through life. Everything is good. I'm getting these paychecks. I'm living life the way that I want to live my life. But now, boom, something interrupts it. And you're not in a position to be able to manage your life anymore. So that's the problem with living in an average way. That when something bad happens, you have no backup plan. You have no way of survival after that. And so now you're at risk. Now you're in a frenzy. Now your life is chaotic. Whereas if you had applied the 10X rule in your life to be able to create greater amounts of success, you wouldn't be in this position. Okay, so he says it's not uncommon to encounter a situation that will change a person's life, career, marriage, business, or finances, right? Think about it. You lose your job and your whole entire life is then impacted. So again, there are things such as your career, your marriage, your business, all of that. You lose your job, that's going to be impacted. Now, when you have been taking only normal actions, you are even more susceptible to challenges that are certain to come your way, right? Because you're not ready. You're not prepared for it. He says, any set of ordinary events, financial conditions, or stressful experiences can throw off a lifetime of typically acceptable levels of action and result in a serious degree of stress, uncertainty, and hurt, right? So just with the losing your job example, imagine there are some people who have worked 40 years, they've worked 50 years, 30 years, they've dedicated all their time to this job, and now suddenly they're let off, right? They're let go. And when that happens, their whole world is rocked and they just can't believe it. They're like, I worked here 15 years, I worked here 29 years, and they're just going to let me go like that? And guess what? Because you have not been implementing the 10X rule, you're hurt. You're in a bad position. And then he says, not even to think about the negative spiritual impact this has. He says, take into consideration the negative spiritual effects of a person, knowing his or her true potential for action, and then operating well below that which he or she is capable of. So there's some of us who were working, we have families, we might go to church, you go to your place of worship, but he's saying you're still operating at a level of normalcy and you're not fulfilled because you are not implementing the 10X rule in your life, because you aren't operating at your full capacity. So when you think about your life, are you operating at your full capacity, or are you just doing the bare minimum just to get by? All right, so let's move on. Ask yourself and be honest with yourself. I want you to ask yourself, do you have more energy and creativity available than you're using? Do you have more energy and creativity available than you're using? Average student, average marriage, average kid, average finances, average business, average products, average body type. Who really desires average? And then he gives the example. He says, think about commercials, right? What if the commercial was like, here's this average product, and if you use this average product, you're going to get average results at this average price, and everything is just going to be mediocre about your entire experience. Buy this, right? Who's going to buy that? Nobody. We're looking for excellence. We're looking for the best, right? And so why is it that if we want the best and we expect the best, that we only want to give average? We only want to give mediocre. Does that make any sense? So, hey to everyone who's joining in. We're discussing the book, The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone, and we are on chapter 7. Now tonight, typically I would go through essentially every page in a lot of detail. Not going to do that tonight, especially since I hopped on here kind of late. Okay, so make sure you get the book and read the book and get all the information that you need. So he says, taking normal action is the most dangerous of the levels because it is the most accepted by society. This level of action is authorized by the masses, and therefore people who don't take normal actions don't draw the necessary attention required to catapult them into success. So if you're not taking the action, people aren't recognizing who you are. They're not identifying with your products. They're not identifying with your character. And so therefore, the doors of opportunity are not being open to you because people don't know about you. So remember when we talked about in the very beginning of this chapter is that taking action is so key. Being persistent, being consistent, and being disciplined in your action is key. But the other thing that is key is how to calculate the amount of action that needs to be taken, because the amount of action and making sure that you get your ideal, your goal in front of the right people are just as important, right? So that is 3, average, normal. So let me just go over this real quick again for those of you who might just be joining in. Number 1 is do nothing. Number 2, retreat. Number 3, take normal levels of action. And then number 4, take massive action. So we're talking about the 4 degrees of action. So now the 4th degree is massive action. So really, when we think about this, massive action is natural for us. When we're children, we're on the go. We're up, we're moving, we're getting into things, we're inquisitive, we're wanting to read, we want to play, we want to do this, we want to do that. And a lot of times children are looked at as high sprung, right? And so what do us adults begin to say? Sit down, be quiet, do this. Like we want to tame them versus redirecting their energy. And so massive action is natural until we are taught otherwise. So he begins to use the example. He says, dive beneath the surface of the ocean and you will see constant and massive amounts of activity taking place. Just beneath the crust of the earth on which you walk is tremendous movement going on. And let me get back to my spot. He said, look inside an ant mound or into a beehive, and you will see colonies of living beings generating massive amounts of action in order to ensure their survival in the future. Nowhere in any of these environments are there signs of retreat or no activity or anything close to what would be considered normal levels. If you want success, if you want to be able to ensure your future, if you want to be able to leave a legacy, leave an inheritance, then massive action is a must. And we must be able to look around and take an example and take note from the anthill, from the beehives, where they're working, where they're going out and they're storing up for their future. And they're not struggling day by day. No, they're preparing and they're thinking ahead and they're taking the action, 10 times more action, 10 times more thought in order to receive greater amounts of whatever it is that you are trying to achieve in your life. So Grant goes on to give his story where his father had passed when he was 10, but his father was a good man. He was a disciplinary. He learned a lot from his father and still was able to take in those lessons. But there was a point in his life where he began to retreat because he didn't have a father. And not only did he retreat, but he started pointing his interest into drugs and alcohol, doing it on a daily basis, and he had no sense of purpose. And that's where many of us are. Because certain things have happened to us, we're fearful of our future. It's caused us to retreat, or we're just fearful of what the outcome might be if we do take action. And so now we're retreating into things that aren't doing us any good. So it wasn't that he didn't have potential, but it was that he didn't have the proper direction. He was misinformed about how he needed to attack life. And that's for some of us, is that we are just misinformed and we have been misdirected on how we need to attack life. But now that you're reading this book with me, you understand that you need to be taking massive action towards your goals so that you can achieve success. Okay, so he said he spent a lot of his time being bored. He was without purpose. He was gravitating to areas in life he says, in which I could expend a lot of energy but not produce constructive results. Some of us are spending a lot of energy on things but not getting any constructive results. I mean, think about the amount of time we spend on social media. That is an area where we are spending a lot of energy scrolling, right? Interacting with different posts, sharing, liking, laughing, whatever it is that you do on social media, but it's not giving you any constructive results. So I'm not saying get off social media. What I'm saying is that when you're here and the things that you do, make sure that you don't just expend all of your time here. That's number one. And then two, be as constructive as you possibly can so that you are going toward your goals and achieving success. Don't just waste all of your time. Okay, so, hey, Bradford. Yes, you caught me live again. All right. So we got a few more minutes to go through. So right now, what we're talking about, for those of you who are joining in, we're on the 10X rule. The book is by Grant Cardone. We're on chapter number 7. And we're talking about the degrees of action. So there's 4 degrees of action. The first degree is do nothing. The second degree is retreat. The third degree is take normal levels of action. And then the fourth degree is take massive action. And that is the degree that we are discussing right now. So you guys make sure you catch the replay if you miss the other degrees, okay? So he says, and when I say he, I'm mainly talking about the author Grant, okay? In most cases, that's who I'm talking about. He had talked about in an earlier chapter where he was at 25 was the first time that he had like a wake-up call in his life that, hey, I'm not doing anything, but if I want to have success, then I've got to change what I'm doing. And that's where some of us are. We need to have a wake-up call. We need to be awakened that we aren't doing anything and that we're not being productive and that we need to start doing something different. And you know when you need to do more. You know, you have that burning calling. You have that piece that's just missing, where you could be doing all of the right things, but there's just still something missing in your life. That is a sign for you to get up and do something, to do more, that there are still things that is within you that you need to be exerting, that you need to get out, that you need to share, that you need to work on. Now, so we have to wake up for misdirection. We have to wake up for misinformation. The fact of thinking that just living normal and just doing the bare minimum just to get by is okay. No, massive action is what we need to be doing. Hey, Brian, what's going on? Okay, so massive action is actually the level of action that creates new problems. And until you create new problems, you're not truly operating at the 4th stage of action. So we'll talk a little bit more about what he means by that. So an example, he says, when I started my seminar business at the age of 29, I employed the 10X rule to create a name for myself. I would start my day at 7 a.m. He wouldn't come back until 9 p.m. He spent the whole day making cold calls to companies, offering to do presentations. He would visit as many as 40 organizations in a single day. He says, I remember being in El Paso, Texas, a city where he had never been, knew no one, and no one knew him. Within 2 weeks, he had seen every business in that market. And although he wasn't successful in making every one of them his clients, he certainly secured more business by taking massive action. That's what we have to do. We have to take massive action. We have to get out there, feel uncomfortable. Maybe the hours might be longer. Maybe the hours might be unconventional, but you have to do what you have to do in order to achieve the level of success that you want. So there was this guy who shadowed Grant, and he said that the guy after a couple days was like, there's no way that I could do this. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm not shadowing you anymore. I couldn't do this every day. And Grant said it was because he approached every day like my life depended on the actions I took. Now, Grant isn't saying do this for the rest of your life. What he's saying is when you apply the 10X rule of more action, more effort, more thought, then what's going to begin to happen is that you can attain what it is that you're supposed to attain, and then you don't have to work as hard, right? So then it becomes a habit. Then it becomes something that is just habitually happens versus all of this energy that you have to exert, because you will learn how to strategize. You will learn the right patterns, the right things to do in order to achieve what you want. So in this moment of being able to get to your highest level, you want to approach every day. And I need to work on this too. Approach every day like your life depends on it. So when you take massive action, routine might be out the window. Like Grant said, he would get up at 7 a.m. His day wouldn't end until 9. But, you know, just going and doing your routine 9 to 5 type deal isn't typically going to get you where you want to be. And so it might cause you to do a little different activity than what it would normally take. All right. But if you really want success, you have to be open and willing to doing that. He says signals that you're taking massive actions are having people comment upon and admire your level of activity. However, we can't just base massive action on compliments and what other people have to say, because we could be putting on a really good front out here and people not really understand what the results are that we're getting. So we have to base it on every day we just continue to take massive action and not allow our egos to get in the way because somebody complimented you and said, hey, I saw your Facebook Live. And so I know you have to be doing big things because I saw that you took pictures and you were in Mexico, right? Because people start talking to you about the things that you are doing, that is a good signal that you're taking massive action because people are recognizing what you're doing. However, you can't allow that to be your high point, because once you feel like you've gotten to your high point, then you stop. And that's not what you want to do. Remember, taking the massive action, you want to continuously be in a place of motion. Okay, so don't allow that to stop you. The other thing that you don't want to allow to stop you in your quest to achieve your goals is haters, right? Those people who are going to be like, well, why are you doing all that? It doesn't take all that. You know, they feel uncomfortable because you're working harder. And most times it's because you're working harder than them and they don't really understand. Like the mindset is completely different. They're like, well, what's wrong with struggling from paycheck to paycheck? Well, what's wrong with just doing the bare minimum, right? Because they're in one of the other categories. They're in categories 1 through 3. Do nothing. I done forgot 2 already. Do nothing, retreat. That's it. Retreat. And number 3, just do things at a normal level. And so when they're operating at 1 through 3, it's hard for them to understand you who wants to operate at massive action. And so we can't listen to them. We can't listen to those people who are operating in levels of 1 through 3 because they will only deter us from reaching our full capability. So we have to stop listening to the mediocre people. The second you start hitting it big, you will immediately be judged by the mediocre. People who operate at the other 3 levels of action will be threatened by your activity level and will often make it seem somehow wrong in order to make themselves right. So they're going to be looking like, no, this is what you should be doing. You're just absolutely crazy. Like they're going to think you're crazy for sacrificing. They're going to think you're crazy for going after your dreams and your goals. Especially it's crazy when you get, the older you get, it's kind of like you're doing that now. Yeah, I'm doing it now. You have to be confident in knowing that it doesn't matter how your age, how young you are, how old you are, that you can go after your goals and your dreams and achieve success, but you can't listen to the mediocre people. Okay, now let's see here. He says a mediocre person will tell you that you are wasting your time. This won't work in your industry. It is a turn off to your clientele. No one will want to work with you. Like, they'll just come up with all types of things. You don't want to listen to them. And he says there's two things that let you know that you really are coming upon the degree of massive action. Number one, it's going to create new problems for yourself. You're going to have to look for different ways to handle your success. Or it might be that you're going to have people coming at you where before they were fine, just, if you were on here, you understand this analogy, but they were fine just playing video games with you. But now they're looking at you like, what? You don't want to play video games? Like, you actually want to do work? Like, you're trying to achieve a goal? What's wrong with that, right? What's wrong with this picture? So number one, you're going to create new problems for yourself. You didn't have that before. You didn't have these people looking at you like you were crazy before, but now you do. So that is a new problem. Number two, you're going to start to receive criticism and warning from others, right? And so they can kind of be the same thing. Now, but it might be something completely different. So you have to know when you're coming into massive action and not allow things and people to distract you from continuing to move forward. So you got to stay strong. Y'all got to stay strong. And that all starts in the mind. You have to be firm and knowing that you can achieve what it is you want to achieve. And stop listening to all of this other nonsense that tells you differently. And especially, you have to be mindful of this, like if you're married, because you can go from a place of just being normal and then you go to a place where you want to do massive success. You have to make sure that you sit down and you talk with your spouse and you get a good understanding of what it is that you are wanting to do and get them on board, enroll them into the vision. Or if you have children, because if you go from living in a place of normal, hey, yeah, keep holding on, stay strong. But if you're here at a place of normal, and then you switch gears and you go up here to a place of massive action, then it's going to be a complete shift in the atmosphere. And they're going to be wondering, well, what's happening? Why aren't you spending time? Why are we not doing the things that we would normally do and sitting down and watching the sitcoms and watching whatever TV show that you would typically watch? They're going to be looking at you like you're an alien. So when you decide, when you make the decision that you're going to start operating in massive action, it is important for you to sit down with the people who mean the most to you, your family members, your friends, and just let them know, like, hey, this is the direction that I'm going in my life. And you can invite them to come with you, if that is the opportunity for them. And maybe you can just encourage them to go after their goals, because a lot of people will not understand. When I was dating a guy, and I had gotten a promotion on my job. And so it took me from one location to a different location, and I didn't have as much flexibility. I wasn't out in the field as much. And so my whole life, my whole routine changed. And because of that, that put stress on that relationship. And so it's so important that if you want to continue to have a successful relationship, successful marriage, being in a good position with your children, you have to sit down and talk to everybody, explain to them what should they expect, but at the same token, make sure that you apply action within that to keep up and maintain that, because you don't want to go so far in trying to go after your career that your family gets left behind. But sometimes you will have to make sacrifice. And in those times where you're having to make sacrifice and you may not be as available, you have to make sure that they understand why you're doing what you're doing, so that way it doesn't put a whole lot of stress. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that is a good tip for you all, okay? Now, he says the other thing about massive action and being able to achieve what you want to achieve, in order to deliver at the level of massive action that you need to deliver at, he says, take every opportunity that comes your way. And he gives the example that his wife is an actress. And she says, well, sometimes, she may not feel like she's the right fit for the role, or maybe she's not prepared. And he says, go and take it anyway. And the reason why he tells her to go and take it anyway is it's about exposure. He's like, at least go out there and get your name out there. Allow people to see you. Because even if you're not a good fit for that role, maybe they have a role for you in a different TV show, a different movie, right? And so this is about exposure. This is about networking. Your network is your net worth. And so this is a way to be able to get in front of people. And when I say this is a way, taking every opportunity is a way to get in front of the right people. It's a way to make new connections. It's a way to find the things that you need to be doing, because maybe you're having a hard time identifying the next step to go. Who do I need to talk to? What do I need to do? One opportunity can lead to the next. And so when we're taking these opportunities, even though it may not be the perfect fit right away, when you get there, you go with the intent that you are looking for the right fit. And maybe there's going to be a person there who can introduce you to what you need to be introduced to. Now, when it comes down to when you're walking in your purpose, right? You already have what is within you to fulfill that. So the problem isn't necessarily talent, but the problem becomes obscurity. And so your goal is to get in front of as many people as possible. Let people know that you are there. You have a product, you have a service, you have an answer to the problem. You're the person that they need to marry. You're the person that you want to connect with. Again, whatever that goal is. If you're trying to get God's attention, humble yourself, get in your word, do what it's going to take in order for you to be recognized, so that people see what you're doing and they know what you're doing and they acknowledge you. All right. So in closing, he says, no one is going to come to your house and make your dreams come true. Nobody is going to come and do it for you. This is something that you have to do on your own. No one is going to march into your company and make your products known to the world. Nobody is going to make you stand out in the crowd. Nobody is going to make you do anything. You have to want it for yourself. You have to say, I want to fulfill my full potential. I want to fulfill my purpose. I want to get out here and make these things happen. And when you do that, that's when you're going to begin to see that people notice you. They understand the value that you have to offer. And so therefore, you will start achieving a different level of success. Guys, so tonight, that was chapter 7. And we were going over the degrees of action, the 4 degrees of action. So do nothing, retreat, take normal levels of action, take massive action. You want to make sure that you don't fall in the first 2 for sure, because that's only going to lead to failure. Number 3 is normal. And when you do normal, you're going to get normal. And he says that's actually the most dangerous place, because when you're in that place, it's accepted and you're not pushed to grow. Everything is just kind of going at this constant place. And then if something bad happens, you're not prepared to handle that. And we don't want to be there. So what we want to do is take massive action, get to a place where people are recognizing the value that we have to offer, so that we can achieve the level of success that we desire. Guys, make sure you share this video if this helped you at all. And when you do that, you're going to be able to get into the drawing for cash prizes, gift cards, and health products. So it has been wonderful talking with you all tonight. My name is Camille Aiko, and I hope that you are living the life that you love, spiritually, mentally, physically, and financially. Good night.